Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello there, listener. This is an 1865 special. Basically, because there's a little break in the playing schedule, we've decided to do something a little bit different today. I'm Rich Ferraro, and I'm joined by George Edwards, Steven Toplis, but first it's over to our Master of Ceremonies, Tom Newton.
Evening, listeners. So basically what we're doing today is a Nottingham Forest worst player draft. So there's me, Rich, Stephen and George, who's going to go through our 1 to 11 of worst Forest players we've seen. Once a player's gone, nobody else can pick that player. So basically we're going to go round by round and see who has the worst Forest team in history. So the only rule is that the players have to have played some minutes for the club. So the Greek international Taxidis doesn't count because he never had any minutes in a Forest shirt. So I will start, and the first pick I'm going to have is the goalkeeper. And if the listeners have been seeing my tweets over the years the year we had Vladimir Stojkovic, how he was Serbia's number one, I'd love to see what the standard was for the other two goalkeepers when they had international tournaments, because he was horrific. Apart from that first debut against Villa, I thought he's okay, but I've never seen anybody have a lack of goalkeeping ability than him. So, yeah, Vladimir Stojkovic gets my pick.
He made up for it with his antics. Mad Vlad, they used to call him.
Kissing the football every time he touched the ball, because he probably thought he'd never see the ball again.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of goalkeepers, I'll come in with my choice. It might be a little bit harsh because technically he was one of our own and came through the academy, but I'm going to go for Barry Roche. The coffee cup incident at Derby still gives me nightmares now, and he was the man in goal for that. I don't remember him being particularly outstanding in a Forest shirt or an improvement on anybody who came before him. So Barry Roche gets my vote in goal.
No problem. So, the next one is Rish. So who's your goalkeeping for this worst 11?
I'm going to go back just a few years beyond Barry Roche, and a name that you might not remember, but also one who's like your choice, Tom, was an international goalkeeper. And I'm going to go for Marco Pascolo.
I remember a game he played, I think it was Norwich on a Friday night, beat them 4-1. And he came for this ball, missed the ball and took off. I think it was Keith O'Neill's head near enough. I think he had to go off with like a cut to his head. So, I think he only played 6 games, didn't he? But I
think that says it all, doesn't it?
It does. So Marco Pascolo gets Rish as pick. So for this round, the last pick is for you, George.
Now, Stojkovic was my pick, and obviously I'm a lot younger than you guys, no offence. So I've been blessed with some quite good keepers over my time. So I've been thinking through, I've had Doris de Vries, who I love, Darlow, who was sort of all right, went on to good things for Newcastle. Then we had Stojkovic, and then Samba, so I couldn't really choose some. So it was between Jordan Smith and Costo Pantilimon. So I've gone for Pantilimon because for a 6'8" goalkeeper, he never came for a cross. He stood in his goal like he was a snail for corners, and he did not capitalise on the strengths that you think he'd have as a keeper. So Pantelimon gets my vote.
Costa
I'm pretty
Pantelimon.
certain that some of our listeners are going to be going, why has no one chosen Turner of Lacademos?
They might be listening.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So right, the second round, St. George went last in that round. He gets the pick of any defender. So
right, left back, Gaetan Bong. Sorry.
It's a strong start, that is.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, that was I was between him and Armand Traore for left back, but Bong, I mean, it's a bit harsh. I don't like doing these worst players, but he was everything you didn't want in a fullback. He panicked when players tried to take him on. He panicked when he had the ball at his feet. He didn't have any pace. And it was a decent player when we signed him from Brighton, but it never came to fruition for us. And yeah, every time he was on the team sheet, you just panicked.
And I remember one of my friends who's a Brighton fan was going, "Oh, you got a good one there," and he proceeded to have the worst debut I've seen in over 30 years of watching Forest.
I was just going to come to his debut. He looked like a duck out of water, didn't he? He did not have a clue what he was doing on that. It was like he's won a competition. Bong's in for left back for George. So, Stephen, your pick.
At left back, I'm going to go for a guy who epitomised the League One years for me, Gino Padula. Signed from QPR. I think it was the first League One season we picked him up under Megson, and I mean there was a lot of dross around the club at this time. You could pick numerous players in numerous positions, but he was up there with them. Gino Padula. I just remember the long hair and nothing else really, other than he was rubbish.
One of my abiding memories of Padula was absolutely a sodden afternoon up in Barnsley, lost 2-0, and the ball come down the line. He slid in, he missed the ball, I think, and took Megson out, and 2,000 Forest fans in the corner were cheering. So I think that's the only memory I've got of Gino Padula, to be honest, and he took Megson out, which made my day.
Some of the players that we've chosen have had some value, haven't they? I was going to go for Gino Padula, and I'm going to go again. I'm showing my age here. I'm going to go way, way back into the late 80s and early 90s and go for a player who I can only describe as the hapless Brett Williams. Can you imagine spending your entire career at a club being the understudy to the best left back that the club has ever had, the inspirational captain, the man who'd go on to captain England, the man who for many, many years was arguably one of the best left backs that England have ever had? And the hapless Brett Williams, all I remember is him having a moustache and then never being as good as Psycho. So it's harsh, but unfortunately it's fair.
So, right, Brett Williams, poor Brett at left back. So my pick is left back. I don't think he was bad. He just never got on the field as much as we would have liked. And he didn't really do a lot while he was here. And I thought when we was getting somebody who's played in the Champions League and when he played for PSV, I thought we're going to get a decent player here, but he was forever injured. And then when he did play, it was just a matter of, it's like one of those runs down the left side of our of the pitch. He was just going to break down with injury. And that was my pick's Davy Oyen.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about him.
And I think his lad's playing somewhere as well. And so that's my pick, Davy Oyen. So I thought he was going to go on to decent things after Jim Brennan was on his way out, but he never got fit, did he? So
just to say, to follow up on what George said, I would add here, I think that Armand Traore has probably had a lucky escape.
Yes, big time. Well, I think Stephen and Rich, you're trying to make an 11 that I've never heard of, and you're going well so far.
So, right, the next round, Stephen, you've got a pick. So, any of your other three defenders for this one?
Right then. So, I am going to go, I think, for centre backs. And my first pick is going to be Matt Mills, a player who had a decent career before he came to Forest. Always looked a very solid Championship defender and then seemed to forget that as soon as he put a Forest shirt on. And he just reminds me of dour days under Dougie. So for me, Matt Mills is my first centre-back.
No problem. So I'm second this time on my list. So centre back, I am going to go for a player who looked pretty decent at Euro 96, and then we got him. So if you look at the time that Derby got Igor Stimac and Aliosa Asanovic, and we get Nikola Jurkan, who for a couple of games in Euro 96 looked all right, then his head completely went against Germany when Croatia actually had Germany at one point. Then they lost it. And then when we got Nikola Jurkan, I think the only thing I can remember him is like theatrically falling over after he made out that Ian Wright had punched him in Stuart Pearce's first game and Ian Wright got sent off. But apart from that, Nikola Jurkan did absolutely nothing for an international player at the time. So he's my pick. And also, when we used to go to Forest matches back in the 90s on the bus, he used to catch the same bus as us.
Oh,
That's brilliant.
That's an unexpected. You shouldn't put that into his Wikipedia page there, Tom.
Yeah.
Well, I'm banned on Wikipedia for even though I've been putting like edits in which are correct. Wikipedia have banned me for 12 months because I keep editing it without an account, so they've blocked my IP number, so I can't do it.
You know, that's in many ways that's the least surprising thing we're going to get out of this podcast, I think.
So, right,
that laugh said it all. By the way, did you hear that? That said it all.
George, your pick.
Well, my player probably played alongside Matt Mills quite a lot. I'm choosing Michael Mancian because he played a long time for Forest, but I could never understand why he got chosen. He always had a mistake in him. And yeah, I mean, it just makes me recoil when I think about him. I keep giving out honourable mentions. People probably think Danny Fox from that era as well, but I love Danny Fox. I thought he was played out of position because he kept being thrown at left back when he had no pace. But yeah, Michael Mancian is my pick. I don't know how he made like 70, 80 appearances for us.
Yeah, that Preston game, just if you ever think back to that Tuesday night, I think did we lose
3-0?
Yeah, and
that's the only game I've left early, that was.
So yeah, he was awful in that game, and that was basically the end of his Forest career. So, Rish, you get the final pick for this.
Well, George has not only stolen my thunder with Michael Mancian, but also I was just thinking, Danny Fox as a left back, that he's lucky to have escaped. And then that reminded me of Dan Harding as well, a player who had all the effort and none of the ability. So left back was fertile ground. Who'd have thought that a post-Pearce Forest would have had problems at left back? But anyway, so Mancian has gone. And also interesting that Mancian, Matt Mills and Danny Fox have all been previous wearers of the Forest captain's armband. And that's a sign of barren times, isn't it? I'm going to have to go back again a few years because of Mancian having been taken off the list. And I'm going to go for David Platt's very first signing, Mr. Moreno Manini, an Italian veteran who showed that actually all of the technical ability in the world doesn't count for anything if you have no strength, pace, and you're old.
Yeah, I remember when we signed him, everybody was like saying he should be in a nursing home. He was that old, so the three Italians. So that is that round done, and Rish, you get the first pick for the next round of your other two defenders.
I'm gonna go for right back now. So we've had a left back, we've had a centre half each. I'm gonna go to right back, and I mean, again, it's predictable. And Stephen, you'll know where I'm going with this. It's Nicky Eden. Again, a player who could be prefaced with the hapless, a player who Barnsley fans absolutely loved. And interesting fact, fans, my best mate went out with Nicky Eden's cousin. She was lovely. He just had a really horrific time in a red shirt, and I'm sure he was glad when it was over.
George, you get the second pick for this round.
So, right back has been quite a strong thing for my Forest career. Eric Lehigh was the guy I grew up watching, and then we had Matty Cash. But sandwiched between those two was Carl Jenkinson, who we signed from Arsenal, and with a little bit of promise, but he'd never had a game for Arsenal. And then he came in and absolutely stunk the place out. I think at one point we played him and Bong on the wing. I remember for one game, and that was a new low for Forest. So Carl Jenkinson's my right back.
What a time to be alive. So,
and lest we forget that beautiful clip of him in that cup match against Swansea, where he brought the ball forward, he looked up, completely missed the ball, fell over, lost the ball.
I'm going to go centre half, and he only played one game for us, and it's Kevin Gomez. He was part of the three signings on deadline day. I think played Watford, didn't we? And Jabor was signed, and Fox, and basically, but yeah, Gomez had a game against Barnsley. I think first 5 minutes he just hauled somebody because he had like the turning circle of an oil tanker, and we never saw him again. So I'm going to pick Kevin Gomez for that, and I think he landed up in Dundee of all places after that. So, and I don't know where he's gone now. So he gets my pick as centre half with Nicola Jurkan. Stephen, you've got the last pick of this round.
I'm going to pick my other centre back because I need a bit more time to decide my right back, and my second centre back is going to be Danny Cullip. Another player from the League One years, a player who came with a solid record. I think he'd been at Brighton, hadn't he, and done quite well with them and looked all right in League One, and then turns up at Forest and was next to useless. All I seem to remember his only move would be clearing the ball into touch because he was incapable of playing the ball forward. So playing the ball sideways into the stands was Danny Cullip's signature move. And yeah, he is another one from that League One nightmare.
No one ever scored from Rose Ed, Stephen.
So before we go for a break, I'm going to pick my final defender. And it was a game when we just sacked Paul Hart. Joe Kinnear coming, we played Gillingham, and they had a decent right back called Kevin James. And I thought, he looks decent. Then we signed him. He made his debut. Well, his first game for the club was against Tottenham, and he come in on. I think the ball was crossed in, and he missed the ball and collided with the post, a bit like Phil Babb style. And we didn't see him then until the following December, January, where we was really in the mire, and he just looked like he lost all footballing ability, and subsequently, I think he just went out of the game at that point. Rich, you.
Okay, so
for this round.
So I've still got a centre half to choose, and I'm going to go this. I'm sorry, George. This is another one of Ask Your Grandparents, but I'm going to go for one of Brian Clough's last signings, and he is actually at the club for a surprising amount of time. But if you read Brian Clough's second autobiography, he admits that this was the signing that showed that he'd lost his powers. And I'm going for Carl Tyler, who arrived for $1.5 million from Barnsley. So he hung around for several years, and then he went on to Aston Villa. So he had a Premier League career after leaving us, but he never looked like a £1 million plus defender.
Stephen, you get your pick.
I'm going to try and complete my defence now. Go for a right back, and he was a player who I actually quite liked because he was entertaining and he used to bomb forward a lot from right back, but he was a bit of a liability. And that's Gilberto Pereira, a player who should never have been playing at right back. Great fun, but with a lot of fun came a lot of concern going the other way.
Was it Birmingham, though? Was it Birmingham who scored that unreal goal? I'll never forget that. I used to justify pick, but that boy, if he'd have played centre mid a bit more.
Yeah, that was pretty much goal of the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was unreal.
But also, it proves the point, doesn't it, that both of you just made, that couldn't defend, but if you just put him in a more advanced position, either as a winger or even as an attacking central midfielder, then...
Yeah.
Did he get sent off 3 times that season? I know he got sent off against Villa, didn't he?
Villa was one, yeah.
And then he got
something silly like getting involved with the crowd or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, in his defence, he didn't actually. He went up to the advertising boards, didn't he? And then all the fans mobbed him. Then he got a second yellow card and he was off and everything. But I'm sure he got sent off a couple of more times that season. So he was entertaining to say the least. So Right. George, you get your final pick for this round. I think you got a centre half remaining.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to go for, and it's a bit harsh because in the promotion season he played his part in us going up, but there was a reason why Steve Cook replaced him. So Tobias Figueiredo, I think he made so many mistakes. I had a look actually. The one thing I looked at for this pod was how many own goals he scored, and I thought it was a lot more than 3. But yeah, it was just he couldn't win anything in the air. He was rash. He would play passes that you think, why has he seen that? And I never felt comfortable with him at the back. So Figueiredo goes in, unfortunately, for me. Yeah.
Every time I saw Figueiredo, he looked like he just wanted to kill anybody anywhere within 5 yards of him. He just had that look, didn't he? So
yeah, and once we had the back 3, once he had sort of Worrell and McKenna either side him and Coops, he looked all right. But until he had that cover,
yeah.
I think you're being particularly harsh there, George. And also, I will reiterate what Tom said, which is if you're walking down a dark alley at night and Toby were coming the other way, yeah, exactly. It's a good job he wasn't that quick because it gave you a chance of getting away.
Yeah, I didn't have many other options though. I can't think of many.
Before we go to the break, then, so my team at the moment: Mad Vlad in goal, Davy Oyen, Nicola Yurkan, Kevin Gomez, and Kevin James. Rish's defence at the moment is Marco Pascala in goal, Brett Williams, Manini, Cole Tyler, and Nicky Eden. Stevens is Bo Roach in goal, Gino Petula, Matt Mills, Danny Cullup, and Hildeberto Pereira. And George's is Costel Pantelimon in goal, left back, Gaetan Bong, Michael Mansi and Figueiredo in the middle, and Carl Jenkinson at right back. So we'll go for a break, and then we'll reconvene for the midfield and the front two.
For the 23-24 season, 1865 is sponsored by Green King Sports, where football is more than a game. Their venues are showing every televised Forest fixture over the course of the season, so instead of turning to the internet for a dodgy stream, get your mates together and get down to your local Green King pub and get closer to the action. They've launched the Green King Sports Instagram page, which will be home to fan content, deals and competitions throughout the season. They've already given away Champions League final tickets and signed shirts, so you don't want to miss out. Drop them a follow and you won't just be the first to know about all of this. You'll be helping us here at 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Okay, welcome back to 1865. It's Rich here, and I'm here with Stephen and George, and it's back to Tom, who's convening our worst Forest 11s.
So for the starting midfield, George, you get the first pick of who starts your engine room.
Okay, can I go on the wing first if it's 4-4-2?
Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go Nicolau Dimitriou, who came, I think it was a loan signing, who absolutely stumped the place out. It was like a headless chicken. He had a slight bit of pace, but as soon as he went anywhere near the ball, you basically were just giving it to the other team. So Nicolau Dimitriou.
I remember when he signed, I think we just sold Ollie Burke, and I think one of his lines was, I'm going to be the best player in the world. Or try to be the best player in the world, and I've never known a player to be so far from it than Nicolau Dimitriou. So.
It's a strong start from George, I have to say.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
So, Stephen, your pick.
I'm going to go for a few years later, another loan signing, Adama Diakhaby.
There's some contenders in this position, aren't there?
A winger with sledgehammers for feet. He produced one of the worst first touches I've ever seen from a Forest player. We were playing Fulham at home. I think it was during lockdown. And all he had to do was knock the ball past the defender because he had the pace. But he hit the ball basically into the Trent and was never going to catch it. It was the worst first touch I've ever seen. I don't remember any end product from him in a Forest shirt. And it was hard to believe that a club once paid £7 million for him. I think that club was Huddersfield, actually.
Yeah.
Certainly was, yeah. And so a couple of things to mention there. Number one is our friends at the Takes That Chance podcast, who some listeners may remember that we spoke to them as with the opposition view back when we were in the Championship, and they were so amazed that any club was willing to take Diakarby off their hands. They thought that they had our pants down on that one, and it's hard to disagree with them. And then the other thing is, that's memorable first touch. Yeah. Again, our friends at Second Tier podcast, every so often they'll just put that on their Twitter feed just to remind everyone.
If you saw it now, you'd think it'd been made by AI. Because it was so bad.
Rish, you get the next pick.
Well, as we had, I mean, these are strong starts, and I think I can even then trump what we've already had. And it's from the same era as Nicola Dimitriou. I'm going to go for Lika. So good, they only named him once.
I actually, I was their moment, and I actually saw his debut at St Andrews, and he did absolutely nothing. And I'm sure he just chucked water on his face to look like he's actually done something. But no, we may as well have played with 10. That's how much use he was. He did absolutely nothing. I think the ball got played into him, and I can't remember who their defender was at the time. Just shouldered him off the ball and just went flying over the touchline, and that was the end of Lika. Was
he a ringer? Was he like that Ali Deer who played for Southampton in the 90s?
That popped up on Facebook the other day, that story, when Souness bought him. Right, my next pick, he was one of the 3 Italians David Platt signed in 99. And he had a bit of northern flu, where anything north of Nottingham, he didn't play in away games. And I think he did all his best football was at the City Ground, even though it was very brief. But yeah, he didn't do much, and I think he went back to Perugia after so many months. But yeah, Gianluca Petracchi gets my pick. He was just
Pepe.
Yeah, he just didn't want to. You could just tell that he didn't want to be here, and they sold him the dream, and that dream was never
David
there, was
Platt.
Yeah, Stephen, you get the next pick.
I'm going to go, I think, to the left of midfield now, and a player who joined Forest, and I think there was a bit of excitement around him. We signed him from Oxford, but I think we signed the wrong promising player. They had Jerry Beauchamp on one wing and Chris Allen on the other. We went for Chris Allen, and I don't remember anything of note that he did in the Forest shirt. I remember he could run a bit of pace about him, and that's about it. And for that reason, Chris Allen is my left winger.
Are you saying that he was the Diakarby of the 90s?
Well, the 90s have come back round recently, haven't they? So maybe that was Diakarby's tribute act to Chris Allen.
Yeah, I remember Joe Beecham was some player, God rest his soul. But yeah, it's been a theme, hasn't it, over the years that Forest get the wrong player from the club. I mean, when we signed Simon Cox, we've got him now, but we should have got him way back when Chris Wood was there. I always say we got the wrong striker from West Brom, and then obviously what you've just said, Stephen, got the wrong player from Oxford in the mid-90s, which Joe Beecham was the better player, obviously.
You got Wood now. What more do you want?
I get the next pick. I'm going to go for the left wing now. I'm going to pick a player who came with a lot of promise. He's played in the Champions League. He's played for Manchester City. He's played for his country. But the word mercenary just follows him around like wildfire, and absolute show pony when he scored the Panenka against West Ham, and he was like thinking, I'm on television, look at me kind of thing. And everybody went over to Jamie Patterson, who actually won the penalty. So Jamal Abdoun, probably the best beard in the Championship at the time, but he gets my pick. George, it's your pick.
I'll go on the other wing as well then. I'm going to go for Gil Diaz, who we signed on loan the same season we signed those 3 Portuguese guys. And he actually started off all right. I mean, I remember that Newcastle Cup game. He had a blinder. He scored that, was it a little chip goal towards the end, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But then he just went downhill from there. And I'll never forgive him for that Norwich game away at Boxing Day, all the way to Norwich, 3-0 up, 76 minutes, and we bottle it by 2 mistakes from him. And then he never got a look in, and I think he went back in January or something like that. So Gil Diaz for me.
When you have a match named after you, it's either for very good or very bad reasons. So the Gil Diaz match.
Yeah, sometimes they put it on Sky, don't they, as filler, and when they put that game on and you think, oh, look, I remember this game, 3-0 up, then Gil Diaz comes on and the rest is history, isn't it? So
it was a sliding doors moment of that season, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. So, Rish, it's your pick.
Well, I'm gonna go for a similar pick actually. I was gonna go for Abdoun, but obviously that's no longer an option. So I'm gonna go for Diogo Gonçalves, who was just as we had the 3 Italians in the 90s. The equivalent of that was the 3 Portuguese, and again, it's something that everyone was so excited about, so much promise, and just like the 3 Italians, nothing really emerged out of it in the end.
So it's the next round of picks. Rish, you get the.
So we're going central midfield now, aren't we? So I've had Lika and I've had Gonçalves as my wingers. So I'm going to go to just after Forest came so close in the playoffs with that Sheffield United semi-final, and Paul Hart had to rebuild the team after 3 or 4 players left under freedom of contract, including the likes of Ricky Shimmiker and Jim Brennan and so on. And the player who we thought was going to replace Ricky Shimmiker, he was Danny Zonner. What a signing.
God, yeah.
It's one of those, do I remember this right? Played Derby. They scored first, Junior scored, Andy Reid's equalised, and a cross come in, and Danny Sonner was all on his own on back post, and he missed. It was basically an open goal because the goalkeeper's missed the ball, and he's headed it wide. And then I don't think the commentary is available anymore, but you listen to the commentary on the way home, and was listening to 106 going through with Darren Fletcher, and Cloughie was on there. He was guest commentator, and he says, "You know what, son? I could have scored that with mine. You know what?" And it's a brilliant bit of commentary, and it just goes to show that Cloughie never lost that one-liner. So when he said that, honestly, it was it's typical Clough to say that straight off the cuff. And that every time I see like Danny Sonner on like Premier League years, played for Sheffield Wednesday or whatever, it just reminds me of that moment of what
he
Clough
played in the
said.
Premier League. God help us all.
Yeah, Andy played at international level for Northern Ireland, but that was in the same side as Ian Dowie. So,
total football.
Yeah. So, George, you get the next pick.
I'm going to go for I think the only player that's probably still at Forest that would be chosen, and that's Harry Arter. I'm not sure what he's brought so far. His agent will probably get into the best team. Yes, Harry Arter in the centre of midfield. The only Forest 11 that he's going to get into for a while.
So my pick for midfield, another player from the Gary Megson era. I think he got promoted with Norwich City. Then we signed him, and Norwich fans were saying, you're getting somebody who's called 3 lungs. But we bought him or signed him with 2 lungs on the blink, I think. And it's Gary Holt. Apart from that goal against Yeovil to bring us back into it after, was it the Aaron Davis show and all of that? Gary Holt, he come with a bit of promise, thinking he was going to be that decent midfield to get us out of League One, and it failed to materialise. So Gary Holt gets my pick. So, Stephen, you get the next pick.
I think in centre midfield, my first pick is going to be a player who was involved in the team in one of our lowest moments, relegation to League One. Centre midfield, Gary Megson era Darryl Powell, who was over the hill by the time he signed. I think he'd been at Derby, hadn't he, and played in the Premier League. I think we signed him from Colorado Rapids or somewhere, probably out there on holiday. Anyway, he came back to England for us when we were trying to get him to basically save us from relegation, unsuccessfully. I remember as well a performance away at Coventry that season, which was one of the worst individual performances from a Forest player I've ever seen. And one of those days when you knew that we were condemned to going down.
George next.
So my final midfield, I think, has got what I've got left. I'm going to go for, I think it's about 2018, he was it, Pajdim Kasami. So when he came in, we saw videos of that wonder goal he scored for Fulham. Was it against Palace from the right-hand side of the box, got it into that far corner. But we never sort of saw that player. I think he was meant to be a box-to-box player, but I'm not sure which box he specialised in, to be fair, if any. So Kasami, he did set pieces, and yeah, he didn't offer much to Forest's 11, from my opinion. I'm trying to be as kind as I can here, but
you know what? You're making me think about sort of one of the musical analogies that I sometimes talk about with my friends is that, anyone can write a good song, but it doesn't make you a good songwriter.
Yeah.
Rish, you've got your final pick in midfield.
I've got three people competing for one place in this team, which says a lot about the central midfielders we've had over the years. So I think, and all of them are before George's time as well. So
okay, I'm glad I've not missed anyone then.
Yeah, exactly. So I will go for one from the archives. Again, this is going back to Brian Clough's final season as manager. And this is one that most of you won't remember. Ray McKinnon. So he got in the team. We signed him as a central midfielder. He got in the team wearing the number 4 shirt because Roy Keane was moved back to centre back when we had an injury crisis. So at the time that we had Keane and Clough playing at centre back, and we had Gary Crosby playing in the Clough role, and Toddy Orligson playing at right back because we were so short of players. And McKinnon was signed, I think, from Scotland for a fairly nominal fee, and then shortly afterwards went back to Scotland for a fairly nominal fee.
Yeah, I've seen that name pop up a couple of times, but like I says, you're the only person who's actually had some kind of memory of him. So yeah, thanks for delving into the archives and bringing his name up. So George's midfield's done. Rish's, it's just me and Stephen. So Stephen, your last pick for your midfield.
I'm going to go with a player who epitomised wasted money under David Platt, and that's Gary Jones. Signed him from Tranmere in 2000. I'm sure we paid over £1 million for him. I think he'd been part of that Tranmere team that used to get to cup finals and semi-finals, and they'd always been quite a good championship team. And he was just useless in a Forest shirt. I remember one game, I can't remember now who it was against, but he had a 10-yard head start on an opposition player, and he was beaten to the ball, tackled, and just made a mug out of. Gary Jones.
Gary Jones. My pick is, we signed him following the playoff season under Paul Hart. Shimmick had gone by this point, and we needed to sort out the midfield. And this was when Man U were honestly kids. They were good in the early noughties. Michael Stewart, he come with a lot of promise, and he did absolutely nothing. By all accounts, he was too big for his boots. He thought he was better than everybody, and he didn't last much longer on Trent's side. So Michael Stewart gets my pick in the middle of the midfield.
All I'm just going to do is point out he's kept out of the team at times by Danny Zonner. So,
right. So just to recap then, so I'll pick Vladimir Stojkovic in goal, Davy Oyen, Nikola Jurkan, Kevin Gomez, and Kevin James. Then in midfield, I've got Jamal Abdoun, Gary Holt, Michael Stewart, and Gianluca Petracchi. Rish has gone for Marco Pascalò in goal, Brett Williams at left back, Manini, Tyler in the middle, with Nicky Eden at right back. In midfield, Lika, Sonner, McKinnon, and Goncalves. And then Stephen's gone for Barry Roach in goal, Hildeberto Pereira, Danny Cullip, Danny Mills, Matt Mills, and Gino Padula. Then in midfield, Chris Allen, Darryl Powell, Gary Jones, and Adama Diakabi. And George has gone for Costa Pantilimon in goal, Guyton Bong, Michael Manson, Tobias Figueiredo, and Carl Jenkinson at the back. Then in midfield, Gil Diaz, Harry Arter, Hashim Kasami, and Nikolou Dimitriou. So strikers now. I'm going to go for a striker who he was nicknamed the Terrorist, and his only goal was from 1 centimetre out. Had the audacity to say his move hadn't worked out because Billy only played him at night matches at places like Huddersfield and Blackpool, and when it was too cold for him. Because the reason why I know that, because we went to a end of season players night, and Rafik Jabor was on our table. So the things what he was coming out with, I won't go through all of them, but he says, who wants to play at a place like that, i.e. Blackpool or Huddersfield? And basically he thought he was like better than Nottingham. He says, look, this is where I used to live, and Nottingham, he says, it's too cold, it's not a very nice place. So, and he only scored 1 goal against Yeovil, who are now a non-league side, aren't they? So yeah, Rafik Jabor.
So could he do it on a wet Wednesday night in Stoke? The answer is no. Definitely
not. So yeah, Rafik Jabor gets my pick on that one. So Rish, you get the pick.
I mean, there's some rich pickings for centre forward if you're choosing worst Forest players, and I mean, I've got 5 players listed down here for 2 places in the team. I have to go for someone who, I have to say, he was another one of those who, when you watched like the lower league highlights and you thought, well, maybe there's something there, and you sign him and you realise he's quite possibly one of the worst footballers you've ever seen. In fact, is he even a footballer? I'm not sure. So I'm going to go as my number 9 for Eugene Daddy.
He was a bit of a cult hero, wasn't he, at Tranmere? Didn't he have his own clothing company? And Soccer AM used to love him and all of that, and we got him and thought, well,
if you've got dreadlocks and a cool name, then you can get a long way in this business.
He played up front that game against Barnsley when Megson got took out by Padula, and I think if anything what went wrong in that game in Forest history, that was the game. It was bloody awful.
On the other hand, Megson got took out by Padula, so
yeah, every cloud and all that. So, So Eugene Daddy. Stephen, you get your pick.
My first striker, I'm going to go for somebody who was brought in, was not fit for purpose to replace the player who came before him, and was somebody who was a total disappointment when he joined.
You're not narrowing it down here, Stephen.
No, it's a lot. I've got about 6 or 7 players on the list who fit that description, but taking it back, Premier League, 98-99, Neil Shipley, who came in amidst all the Pierre Van Hooijdonk fallout. We needed a striker. You could tell we were desperate. Dave Bassett went with a player who he knew from earlier in his career at Crystal Palace. Neil Shipley came in. I think he might have scored 1 goal in a Forest shirt, if that, and was totally ineffective. And I'm sure, bombed him out as soon as we could.
Back to Palace, if I remember.
Palace, and I think he went to Barnsley under Bassett as well after. Yeah. And the less said about his post-playing career, the better.
George, you get your pick.
So this guy, we signed him on loan, And if you look at him, it's everything you sort of want in a striker. He was about 6'2", he's decent in the air, had a turn of pace, but you put him in front of goal and he could not hit a barn door. Rafa Mir is my striker. He went on to play for Seville and did semi-decent. And I do not know how that happened, because for us in the Championship, he just looked like completely out of his depth.
And he's one of Europe's most sought-after strikers in the current transfer market.
So,
classic Forest, isn't it? Classic.
Yeah, it's like Bardi. I mean, we never played him, and he finishes the season with a Europa League medal. So just tells you everything, doesn't it? Like, some players just don't fit, or they're not fancied, etc. Then they go on and have a decent career elsewhere. So, George, you get your next pick. Thing you went last in that round.
All right, so Rafa Mir came at the start of his career. This guy came towards the end of his career, and you could tell. Lord Nicholas Bentner is my other striker.
All hail the Lord.
Yeah. An ego that wasn't matched by his footballing ability, unfortunately.
Yeah, his Forest career was special. I mean, he missed that penalty at Newcastle, scored an own goal at Derby. Then he scored. Did he score the winner against Newcastle when they were down to about 4 men or something like that? And we even made that hard work, didn't we? So yeah, Lord Bentner. So,
and of course, George, do you know why he used to wear the number 52 shirt at Arsenal?
Not a clue, no.
It's because he'd been awarded a new contract. So he said, it's a special number for me. And everyone thought, oh, is it like a tribute to one of his grandparents or something? No, it's because he's been awarded a new contract where he's on £52,000 a week.
Blimey, wow, that sums it up, doesn't it, I suppose? Yeah,
doesn't it, just?
It's about right.
Obviously, we had to sign a player of that hilt, didn't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Stephen, it's your pick.
Right, from my long list of Forest striker failures, my next choice is going to be Ishmael Miller, a player who came in. I'm sure, again, we paid about £1 million for him. Decent money under Steve McLaren. I mean, you could put Steve McLaren in there as the worst manager, in fairness, but that's another topic. Ishmael Miller came in. He'd come in with a lot of promise at West Brom at the start of his career. I think he'd been affected by injuries, but you were hopeful that there was still a good player in there, and he was young enough to come back and rebuild his career. But rebuild his career, he did not. He was utterly useless in a Forest shirt. He might have scored once, if that. But again, another player who looked really good at other clubs and then rocked up at Forest and was just useless.
Yeah, he scored. He actually opened the scoring in the game against Birmingham when Steve McLaren fell on his sword, and Doughty, unfortunately, at that time resigned from his chairmanship, and we lost 3-1. And then, if you remember, it was the Green Party, if you remember them, who were advocating for the board to be sacked and all of that. It was really ugly time at Forest, and that day was just horrible all around. And Miller scored in that game. Then I think the following week we played Coventry. I think McLaren had gone at this point, and I think he went on I didn't have a good game against Coventry, and Miller just started having a go at all Forest fans and everything, and that was the end of that. I don't think he ever recovered from that, and
Tom, do you remember who
from the club, didn't he?
Do you remember who scored twice for Birmingham on that day?
Chris Wood.
Yeah, there's a recurring theme here, isn't there?
I remember one of the goals. Luke Chambers just stood there and watched him run at goal and finish.
Yeah, everything about the club was just bereft of spirit, wasn't it? It was a horrific. I mean, we've all seen, no matter what age group we're in, we've all seen some horrific times at Forest, and that's a day rather that it lives in the memory, just because everything just. And I remember as well, even if I remember rightly, Mark Arthur in the pre-match, he'd been on Radio Nottingham saying, "Look, I mean, fans are going to protest, but they really need to be careful what they wish for." And by the end of the day, we're in relegation trouble. The manager had gone, the chairman had gone. Quite a seismic day, really, in the history of the club.
Yeah. And you think like the days under Fawaz were bad, but yeah, that really does stick in the memory.
Well, the days under
Like a
Fawaz were
dark
bad.
day.
Let's not beat about the bush on that one.
Yeah, but that was a really dark day on Trent's side, wasn't it? Everything about that day. So right, moving on. Rish, complete your team.
Okay, so my final centre forward, Stephen, this might sound familiar, is a player who we signed to fill the void after a celebrated striker. He had big shoes to fill there. Came in the Premier League days, and yes, I'm talking about. We've already had one player with a girl's name, Nicola Jurkan. Same era, Andrea Silenzi.
The first Italian to play in the Premier League.
He could also so easily have been the last. Although I would point out that a friend of the podcast, Matt, of Radiant Cleaners fame, who we've hooked up with on our social media feeds a few times, he has the distinction of having seen Andrea Silenzi score a goal for Forest in an away FA Cup tie, a replay at Oxford United, which might have been the reason why we signed Chris Allen, actually, that match.
So my pick, I've got a few. If I went for one, I'm just going off what other people have said, because it was Clough's last ever signing, Rob Rosario, but I never actually saw him in the flesh, so I can't really pick him. And so my other pick, which I have actually had the misunfortunate to see him live, is a player who was signed from Holland, and he had a decent scoring record before, and then we got him, and he just had no footballing ability whatsoever. He looked like honestly, it looked like he was pulling the caravan half the time, and that is Lars Veldwijk, who I think he only scored one goal, and I think that was like after a few loan spells after turning up at Forest. Forest obviously didn't rate him. I think he scored the goal against Millwall under Philip Montagnier. But yeah, we signed him, and I mean, at the time we signed Britta Sombalonga, and but yeah, Veldwijk come in and he was not fit for purpose. He was awful. I think he had one bright game against Bolton away, but apart from that, he did absolutely nothing. And yeah, there was a lot of promise with Lars Veldwijk, but yeah, he didn't bring it. He didn't bring his A game, let's say, to Trent's side when he arrived in, I think it's 2014. So yeah, Lars Veldwijk gets my final pick.
Do we get to choose substitutes as well? Has anyone got any players left over? We can go free reign in terms of positions here, can't we? If we're naming two subs each.
Yeah. George, do you want to go first? Have you got anybody who you didn't get in your side?
The only guy I was trying to wedge in but couldn't was Nuno da Costa, who I don't think we actually saw live, did we? The COVID season, but the own goal that he scored against Stoke, I think, epitomised the previous sort of 6 months that he had up front for us when he ever played.
We did see him play because he came on as a sub in the Gaten Bong match against Charlton.
Oh yes,
that's when he made his debut. Yeah,
that's how forgettable it was.
You're not going to believe this, but a couple of weeks ago, Nuno da Costa scored a hat-trick at the right end for a team whoever was playing for in Turkey. I can't remember who it was now, but I did see it pop up. So, Stephen, have you got anybody who didn't get into your side?
There's a couple of names here who could fill a subs bench. Andy Cole, when he joined, was nothing like the Andy Cole of his prime. He was horrendous that season. He came in after we got promoted to the Championship, Calderwood in charge, and I think Paul Smith did more than Andy Cole that season.
Hang on, the Andy Cole?
The Andy Cole,
yeah. Andy Cole, yeah.
You know, George, what I'd say is that when you sign a celebrated player and you see them walk out on the pitch and you think, are they wearing a base layer? And no, it's just what they look like now.
I did not know he played for us.
In fact, that might also
he didn't, George. That was the point.
But that might also be the season where Paul Smith scored more goals than Andy Cole.
Is there anybody who you would have put in?
Well, I mean, you've already mentioned Robert Rosario, and actually I feel bad putting him in because he had no ability, but you couldn't fault him for effort. The player who I'd go for as my substitute would be, it's another Megson era player, and I bear him no ill will because he did some work for the club after leaving. But it says something when you come as a player who's got promise and then you actually retire from the game after playing for Forest, even though you're like 29 years old. And that's David Frio. And I remember we signed him and he took over. This is after Andy Reid and Michael Dawson had left the club first time round. And we signed him and there was an interview in the programme saying, I'm so honoured to take on Andy Reid's number 7 shirt. And let's just say they were obviously very, very big shoes to fill.
Yeah, he looked a footballer, didn't he? But he was all right for Plymouth. But then it seems to be a common theme on this pod. We sign a player from past glories and they never do anything.
I think when you're relying on he was all right for Plymouth, he was all right for Yeovil, he was all right for Tranmere.
Yeah, exactly. So a player who I would have picked if either Chabot or Lars Velvac had gone is Neil Harris. I mean, he had a fantastic scoring record for Millwall before he joined Forest and after he joined Forest. But when he was at Forest, I think Megson signed him, no, it wasn't Megson. It was, I think Mick Harford signed him because back then there wasn't a transfer window. I think we signed him in like December or something because we signed Adam Nolan at a similar time, and he did nothing with his career. But yeah, Neil Harris, he turned up and I don't know if it was a confidence thing, but he didn't look the player he was at Millwall. He looked absolutely void of any confidence.
And that actually reminds me of another striker we signed in that same era, which is Scott Dobie.
Yes. Again, he looked all right for West Brom under Megson. I think he scored quite a few goals to get them promoted a couple of years before. We signed for us, and apart from that, I think he had a decent debut against Derby. He didn't score, but he had a couple of chances. Then he scored that goal against Yeovil, and he didn't do anything, did he? So that was another strike who's been and gone at Forest.
Another one to add to that list, Adam Proudlock. Do you remember him?
Oh, good
Wolves.
Lord.
Signed from Wolves on loan. I think his debut was against West Brom. I think he was under Paul Hart. The season before the playoffs, he just looked disinterested and did absolutely nothing. 2 or 3 games and he was gone again.
There was another player I could have put. There was Salvatore Matricano.
Yeah.
He was made of biscuits.
The least worst of the Italians.
Yeah, and I think he only played 6 games or something and soon went back to Italy. So, but going over the last, I'm just looking at Wikipedia now, and the amount of dross we've had, it's eye-watering. The money what we've paid in wages, etc. And that's not just the last 2 years on players who have not really kicked a ball, but if you go past the last 20, 30 years, the players who have signed for money, wages, etc., and they've given us 0.
Loads and loads of memories. And I'm sure, listeners, you'll have your own players that you can remember who you're going, oh my God, I can't believe he was even a footballer. And of course, we'll be putting out our teams that we've selected on our social media feed. So that's going to be on Instagram and Twitter /X, depending upon what you want to call it. And also on Threads, and I'll see if I can get it on TikTok as well. And we'd love you to tell us your worst Forest players of your lifetime. We will be back later this week with the Friday 5. We will also have our review of 2023, which will be in your podcast feed probably early next week. And then, of course, we'll be at Blackpool, and we shall also, normal service will be resumed after that as the season resumes. We also hope to do a best player draft later on this season. As always, I want to say thank you, listener, for joining us. I want to say thank you to George. Thank you to Stephen and producer Romeo, who's in the room with him. And also thank you, Tom, for organising the worst player 11 draft. And we will be back in your feeds very, very soon. So thanks for joining us.
Social Podcast Network.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.